protagonist died there. I went into my adulthood before I even knew who he was, and I got really interested in it. So when I went and researched it, I said, well, I'm going to get some of his biographies and read them. I've read about Al Capone and all his Chicago gangster history, and I went to the librarian, said, interlibrary loan, I want to get all the Ness biographies. And she got hold of me about 2 days later, said, there aren't any. Well, that's different. So to make a really long story very short, I set out to write one because I felt it would help countersport to be recognized in there. And as I delved into it, I realized that there was so much that has never been uncovered. So I put a good 25 years into trying to draw out what Ellie Ness really did, and there are a lot of very significant things that have literally been lost in history. Everybody's caught up on the TV show in the 50s and 60s, the movie with Kevin Costner in 1987, some other syndicated TV. He's kind of a legend right now. Our mission is to bring the man away from the legend because he's actually more interesting and more fascinating, in my opinion. So I've kind of had my time on this. I've done the book that came out last year in time for the festival, and what I wanted to do was emphasize a lot of things that had not been reported, and particularly about his time in countersport, because I had done interviews back then, and I think all of them have passed on since. So we captured them just in time, and I've put that in this new and I'd say final book that I'm never going to be doing on it. But I got a lot of countersport angles in here to find out who was this man that walked among us, what was he all about, and some good background to get you there. But last year, I guess you'd say formerly at the festival, decided I really wanted to pass the mantle to a young man here who really impresses me. He has gone so far into this. He's found out things I could never find. He has dogged determination to keep digging it out. And he's informing me now. He actually came and interviewed me, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
And so he was picking my brain, but he took those little, shreds here and there. He's taken it to a new level. So I'm going to introduce you to A. Brad Schwartz.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. As you said, I had much the same reaction when I started getting fascinated with Elliot Ness when I was just in middle school. And having seen the film, having seen some of the TV show, wanting to know more about the real man, there wasn't a whole lot that I could turn to. Fortunately, I had a bit more that I could look toward, which was your book, your first book, the revised version of your Elliot Ness biography, which is really where my research into Elliot Ness began, where everybody's research now with Elliot Ness begins. You've done a great service. I read your book that was available last year. It was a big help to us, my co-author and I, in our research, so I can't recommend it highly enough. As Paul said, my first visit to countersport was a few years ago when I was researching Scarface and the Untouchable, trying to walk in Ness's footsteps as much as possible. Got to meet you finally in person, got to see the town. It's been my privilege now to come back twice for the Elliot Ness Festival and to just see how this whole community has come together to celebrate your hometown hero, and the extent to which you celebrate him is just terrific. So I know this is not what you want to hear right now, but I'm looking forward to coming back next year.
That's what we want to hear.
But it's really been terrific. And before I get into, I just want to first of all thank John and Olga for the use of this terrific space, the wonderful posters which you can enjoy, so that we can be in the presence of my guys, Elliot Ness and Al Capone. You've been great supporters of this festival and of me, and I really appreciate your helping bring my work to a new audience. So please give John and Olga a round of applause. And lastly, Sarah Schwab has been schlepping many copies of this heavy volume around, so please buy some so she doesn't have to plug in these boxes. So thank you for your help. So as Paul said, I had a very similar experience, having seen the pop culture, wanting to know more about the real man, and then discovering a more fascinating character than anything I'd seen on the screen, and wanting to bring that to as many people as possible. Fortunately, I had some help. I did not. This is thick book. I wasn't forced to write it alone, thankfully. My co-author is Max Allan Collins. I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to see Road to Perdition last night at the theater, but he wrote the book that was based on. He's a great mystery novelist, one of my favorite authors since childhood. And he had written, when I was reading your book, I was also reading the novels that Max wrote, mainly about Ness's time in Cleveland. And those were really the only sources that were available back in those days. And he, again, as a novelist, but someone who does a lot of research, who grounds his work in real history as much as possible, had a track record, had a reputation as an expert in this field. And I got to know him by going to book signings like this, convincing him that I shared the same passion for history that he did. And one day, about 8 years ago, when I was still in college, we were complaining about how the real story about Elliot Ness was still struggling to get out there in the public sphere, that a lot had been misrepresented, and a lot of distortions continued to be bandied about as fact. We were complaining, and I finally said, I'm training as a historian at the University of Michigan. You're a crime novelist who knows how to tell a good story. We should join forces and tell this story right. And so that's what we did. And we did such a thorough job that the book that was initially supposed to cover both Capone and Ness through to the end of their lives, which is a ludicrous idea now that I say it out loud. You can see what part one looks like, is now 2 books. So we hope the second volume about Ness in Cleveland, all the way through to Counter Sports, is coming next year. We hope to have it in time for the festival. So you've got 12 months to get through 550 pages plus source notes. So without further ado, maybe we can sign some books. But thank you all for being here, and thank you all for celebrating Mr. Elliot Ness.
Whoa.